And we are back. Welcome back to the channel. This is my preview and predictions for Game Week 37 of the Premier League, the penultimate week of another incredible Premier League season. Before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video if you do enjoy all of my prediction series. And yes, this video is coming a day early. Firstly, because there are 2 Premier League games taking place tomorrow night, and I always want to try and give you guys at least 24 hours to see these videos before we do predictions. But it also means that I can then save tomorrow's video for the FA Cup final prediction, which obviously takes place in the middle of this Premier League game week. And also, as we jump to the second page, you'll see that we've only got 8 fixtures for this video, because this is going to cover all of the weekend games. I will save my predictions for the games on Tuesday for Monday morning, once we know how the 2 teams playing the FA Cup final have performed in said FA Cup final. So without any further ado, let's just get straight into it. And I will say, I won't hide it, I won't sugarcoat it. Last week was my worst ever predictions video. I've been doing this now for nearly 3 years, and last week was my worst ever week. I got 1 out of 10. I won't sugarcoat it, I never hide it. I always am open and honest with you guys. We got 1 out of 10 last week, my worst ever week. But we try and bounce back this week. I actually think we've got some really interesting fixtures here. I think there could be some surprises this weekend, but let's just get straight into it. We have 2 games on Friday night. The first of those sees Aston Villa taking on Tottenham. And for Villa, it is back-to-back wins, which means that they are now up to 6th in the Premier League table. And they know if they win this game, they will be in the Champions League places going into the weekend. Obviously, Manchester City will have that game in hand on Tuesday, but victory here for Villa puts them back in the Champions League places. For Spurs, it is just 1 point in their last 5 matches, meaning they're now down to 17th. They are literally the current worst Premier League side, with obviously all 3 Championship sides getting relegated. And now, with just 2 games left as well, it is an absolutely shocking run of form for Tottenham. In terms of the team news, Kulusevski has now been confirmed that he is probably going to miss the remainder of this season. Well, he is going to miss the remainder of the season. He has had knee surgery. But, of course, what we do know is that Tottenham's priority is going to be that Europa League final on Wednesday night. So as we sit here right now, I imagine the likelihood is that key players are not going to be risked, with the knowledge that obviously Kulusevski got injured last week, and they're not going to want anyone injured before that. For Aston Villa, they're going to be without Aaron Ramsey. They're going to be without Jacob Ramsey following his red card against Bournemouth. I don't think anyone can have too many complaints about that one. He's going to be missing. No fresh injury concerns for them. To be honest, I did think even if Spurs played their full first team here, that Aston Villa would still get the victory. With the likelihood that Spurs are going to play their reserves, I'm obviously going to go for the Villa win here, and I'm going to go for a 3-0 victory to Aston Villa. The other game tomorrow night is basically copy and paste what I just said about the other game. You've got Chelsea, who are now in 5th, who know if they win this game, they will go into the... Well, they're already in the Champions League places, but they could potentially go as high as 3rd before anyone else plays this weekend, should they get the victory over Manchester United. They're going up against the Manchester United side, who haven't won any of their last 7 Premier League games. And not only that, are also in the same Europa League final as Spurs. So in terms of the team news, they're likely to rest a lot of their key players, especially given that they had one of their key players injured last week against West Ham, with Lenny Yoro going off injured. And also, from a Chelsea perspective, one of their players has got sent off in the game last week and is going to be suspended for this one, with Nicholas Jackson picking up a red card. It's incredibly weird how these 2 fixtures have basically lined up exactly the same way. The one difference is, where Aston Villa did win last week, Chelsea did, of course, lose 2-0 to Newcastle, which has weakened their position in the race for the Champions League places. Ultimately, it's the same thought process that I had with the previous game. Do I think United would stand a little bit more of a chance if they played their first team? Absolutely. And I do think Ruben Amorim will play some of his first team players here. But ultimately, with what's on the line for Chelsea, with how little is on the line for Manchester United in this game, I expect Chelsea to get the win here. And I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory to Chelsea. From there are no Premier League games on Saturday at all, because this is where the FA Cup final gets inserted. And then we instead jump all the way to Sunday with a 12 o'clock kickoff between Everton and Southampton. And both of these sides sprung some really impressive results last week that I didn't see coming. There's a reason I got 1 out of 10. These 2 sides are 2 of the reasons. Everton got an incredible 3-1 away victory at European chasing Fulham. Southampton managed to avoid the lowest points tally in Premier League history by getting a 0-0 draw against Manchester City, no less. an incredible result for them, especially when you consider the fact that Manchester City are still chasing those Champions League places themselves, and that draw with Southampton does put some doubt over whether or not Manchester City can reach those positions. That said, they didn't win the game, Southampton, so they are still 13 games without a win in all competitions, but they did beat Everton in the reverse fixture back in November. In terms of the team news, Everton could potentially still be without O'Brien. He missed their win at Fulham last week. No fresh concerns for Southampton coming into this one. To be honest, I still fancy Everton to get the win here. Could we see another potential 0-0 draw? Yes, but I don't really see Southampton scoring against an Everton defence which is very, very good at the moment. I'm just going to go for a nice, easy 1-0 victory to Everton. On to what I believe is the televised kickoff in the afternoon. I think it's a 2:15 kickoff between West Ham and Nottingham Forest. And, well, this is another really interesting one because if Villa and Chelsea both win on Friday night, Forest will not be able to get into the Champions League places even if they win this game here because they drew against Leicester last week and obviously all the drama with Marinakis coming on the pitch at full time with all the drama surrounding the Awoniyi injury. Obviously he is going to be out for a long, long while after collapsing the other day and being rushed into hospital. So I hope all the best for him. And obviously for Nottingham Forest, it's a real blow for them. Granted, it is still going to be Chris Wood that leads the line. But what that means is it's now 4 games in a row for Nottingham Forest without a win. And for West Ham, they finally ended their run of winless games by getting a 2-0 victory at Old Trafford against Manchester United. Yes, there were a lot of Manchester United first-team players not playing, but still, West Ham got their result and it's moved them up to 15th in the Premier League table. Furthermore, since Nottingham Forest have been promoted to the Premier League, every single game between these two sides has been won by the home side, meaning that Forest have won all the fixtures at their ground, West Ham have won all the fixtures at their ground, including Forest getting a nice easy win. I think it was 3-0 earlier on this season, but West Ham have won all the games at the London Stadium. As we've already mentioned, Awoniyi is going to be missing for Nottingham Forest. No fresh concerns for West Ham here. To be honest, with how poor Forest have been, and if Aston Villa and Chelsea do win on Friday night, I don't see Forest getting the result here. If one of Villa and Chelsea drop points, I think that gives Forest more chance of the win, but I don't see it happening. I think West Ham are going to get at least a point here, and that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw between West Ham and Nottingham Forest. On to the 3 o'clock kickoffs on Sunday, and the first of those sees Brentford taking on Fulham. And the importance of this game pretty much solely depends on how the FA Cup final goes. If Crystal Palace win it, then 8th place will not get European football for next season. So what that means is that all this battling between Brentford and Fulham and Brighton and Bournemouth, it all goes out the window if Crystal Palace win the FA Cup. So they're going to be hoping Man City win on Saturday, and I'm going to take the assumption right now that City are, and that both of these teams are going to be going for it at absolute full strength, because I think City are the more likely to win. Obviously, I'll do my prediction for that game tomorrow morning. But going into this, these two sides' form could not be more different if it tried. Brentford have won 4 in a row and unbeaten in their last 6. Fulham have lost 5 of their last 6, including losing at home to Everton last week. However, they did win the reverse fixture. In terms of injuries and suspensions, no fresh concerns for either side here, so we're going to be going in at face value. It's another game at the G-Tech, so we've got to expect a lot of goals. There have been absolute chaos games at that stadium this season, but honestly, with the form that Brentford are in, they're thoroughly deserving of their 8th place. They obviously cannot catch Nottingham Forest now. With just 2 games left, Forest are 7 points ahead of them, so 8th place is the best that any of these sides can finish, and I'm backing Brentford to make a real claim for that 8th place spot by winning this game by a scoreline of 3-1. Whilst that game's going on, and why I mention how close things are at the moment, we have Leicester taking on Ipswich, who at the moment are only separated by 5 goals. Yes, both sides have already been relegated, but with both sides on 22 points, there is still a lot of prize money to be had for finishing 18th rather than 19th. And like I just said, because Ipswich have a 5 better goal difference, for Leicester, it is win or essentially you're finishing 19th for the season. That said, they have actually found their goal scoring touch over the last couple of weeks. They obviously beat Southampton and then got that impressive 2-2 draw away at Nottingham Forest last week. whilst Ipswich were losing at home to Brentford. So there is definitely a reason to go for Leicester in this fixture. There are no fresh injury concerns for either side. However, neither are expected to have any injured players back as well. Both sides are still missing a lot of players. What I would warn about people making predictions for this game is that the last 3 fixtures, so the game earlier this season and the 2 games in the Championship last season, all finished in 1-1 draws. So I do think there is a good chance we see something similar here. However, for me, the script is just absolutely written for one man and one man only, and that is Jamie Vardy. It is his last ever game at the King Power Stadium in front of Leicester fans. It is also his 500th game exactly for Leicester, and he's on 199 goals. If that's not written for Jamie Vardy to score his 200th goal in his 500th game, in his last game at Leicester, I don't know what is. I'm going 2-1 for Leicester with Jamie Vardy grabbing the winner. I'm a football romantic. I want to see that happen. Let's see if it does happen. Then we have the main event, which is by far the biggest game of the weekend and easily one of the biggest games of the season. Arsenal taking on Newcastle. 2nd versus 3rd. However, that may not be the case depending on how Villa, Chelsea and obviously Manchester City are not playing. So depending on how Villa and Chelsea do in the lead up to this game. If they win, and Forest. If Forest, Villa and Chelsea all win, before a ball is kicked in this game, Arsenal will be on 68. Newcastle, Villa and Chelsea will all be on 66. City and Forest will both be on 65. That is how close it could be in the race for Champions League places before a ball is kicked here. Both of these sides also got good results last week. As we've already spoken about, Newcastle got the win against Chelsea, an impressive 2-0 win for them. Arsenal, with a semi-depleted team, went to champions Liverpool, went 2-0 down and pulled it back to 2-2. And I've got to give them massive credit for that because I gave them no chance at Anfield. And fair play to Arsenal for that because it does near enough cement their position in the Champions League for next season. The problem is their record against Newcastle, especially this season, is horrendous. They have played 3 games against Newcastle this season. They have lost all 3 and they have not scored in any of them. So I actually think that with the momentum from last week and the head-to-head record, and with Rice still being injured, with Marino being suspended, and Newcastle holding no fresh concerns from last week other than maybe Sven Botman, but it looks like he is going to be available for this one, I'm going to go for the surprise result here, and I'm going to go for a Newcastle win. A win that would see Newcastle go above Arsenal into 2nd in the Premier League table. I'm going to go for 1-0 Newcastle. Watch this space. Obviously, Arsenal are still going to be considered favourites. But like I said, 3 games, 3 wins, no goals conceded for Newcastle against Arsenal this season. And Arsenal have injury concerns coming into this. I think this is a real opportunity for Newcastle to do some damage. And then finally, the Monday Night Football sees Brighton taking on Liverpool. Again, as we've spoken about, Brighton will know the destiny of European football after the FA Cup final. But let's assume they've got to win this game. And they're coming up against a Liverpool side who, if we're being honest, we know are more than likely going to rotate the majority of their players, with the first team being saved for the final game at Anfield, where they can have their big celebration in front of their home fans. So with that said, I actually think that Brighton should be considered the favourites here. Yes, Liverpool have won their last 3 meetings against Brighton, but with Brighton playing their full first team, with a fair few of their injured players back and available for this one, and João Pedro back from suspension, I just think if Liverpool are going to put out a reserve tide, you have to consider Brighton to be the favourites here. This could be a game where, like I say, you have to wait until you see the starting lineups before you can make that decision. But even then, Brighton won away at Wolves last week, and that was a really good result for them. Liverpool's best available team last week could only draw 2-2 at home to Arsenal. So there's possibly even reason to say if Liverpool play their first team with the attitude they showed last week, Brighton could capitalise, especially if Brighton are going for it and still have a chance of qualifying for Europe. I'm going to go for Brighton here. That might be a mistake, but I'm going for a 2-1 victory for them. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Don't forget to check out tomorrow morning's video where we will be discussing the FA Cup final between Crystal Palace and Manchester City. And also, don't forget to check out my remaining playoff prediction videos that have been available at the top of your screen throughout this entire video. Thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you tomorrow.